G'day guys, Josh here. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. I thought I'd give my take on the WoW beta dungeons. Okay, the new Titan beta dungeons. And I've got to say, they are pretty awesome, okay? They are pretty awesome. It's a big improvement compared to the alpha dungeons, where some of the alpha dungeons were just like, oh god, not this place again. And I can name a few in particular, being Gundrak, Drakthron Keep, Utgarde Keep, and Utgarde Pinnacle. Those are the 4 dungeons where everyone's like, oh god, I don't want to run these ever again kind of thing as well. Well, there was some of them that were quite awesome, you know, being Halls of Stone, Halls of Lightning, where you can just brush through, especially if you're a tank when you're doing 100% extra damage. And Oculus and Nexus and Violet Hole with minor headaches, just destroying the mirror images, and that's it. So if you had a Druid or a Paladin in your group, it was fairly easy, or a Mage, even with the Icelands as well. But, I've really liked, the ingenuity and the inventiveness of their, new affixes. And a lot of people have been asking, can we get these sort of Mythic Plus affixes with no timers? And maybe some good affixes as well? And that was actually really good to see. But now let's start with the first one, okay? Halls of Stone and Halls of Lightning, okay? In the Ulduar Age and Storm Peaks. I've got to say, this is the best affix yet, okay, that they've done. Basically, everyone gets time power, I think, every second for every mob that you've pulled. And pretty much when you hit 100 time power, you get all the buffs from the various guardians, being Mimiron, Freya, Forum, and Hodir, getting 10% extra damage and health and whatnot. And it's just like kind of like a mini Yogg-Saron counter as well, where you have to engage these tentacles, which are strategically placed in a dungeon, and get it down to 5% before you run out of sanity. And you can only kill it if you have Forum's buff by getting 100 stack of the debuff, which may seem hard, but it's actually quite easy. And then you can carry along this 100% debuff throughout the entire dungeon because it lasts 11 seconds. And it gives you more damage, more HP. And you can just chain pull the dungeon, basically. Now, in Halls of Stone, there's a bit of a downtime, obviously, with the, everyone does the skip runs and they do the Count of the Stone. And it's just like you sit there and you lose the buff, you gain it, you lose the buff. But there's so much trash in there that you can easily gain the buff and keep chain pulling over and over and over again. And overall, like, these affixes are just awesome, like absolutely awesome. And I gotta say right now, I wasn't expecting much from the beta dungeons after the alpha dungeons, but geez, that was very good from them as well. Let's go to the next good one, okay? Next good one. Oculus, Nexus, and Violet Hold. Okay. They did it again. I'm gonna say right now, they did it again. Now this time they actually gave a reason for the DPS to actually destroy the images. So now there's 3 images. There's one that's Holy Light, there's one that enrages and attacks the healer, basically, always. And there's one that does Arcane Missiles. So Holy Nova, Arcane Missiles, and Rage. And every time you kill one of them, you get a 5% buff. Now, I'm going to say overall, this gets kind of crazy in Oculus. It's an infamous 7 pool in Oculus, where basically you get 21 mirror images, and it's just like, pray that your healer doesn't die. But I'm going to say this is really good, because basically Oculus used to be a headache. Used to be all one guy, just make sure you kill the Arcane Missiles dude, and that's it. Now you actually get a DPS buff and a movement buff. So every ad you kill, you get a 5% haste buff and a 5% movement speed buff, stacking up to 6, lasts for 30 seconds. And you can just blast through the dungeon with that, that as well, making Nexus a lot easier and Oculus a lot easier. Violet Hold, unfortunately, still takes the same amount of time, and it is quite annoying, frankly, It's still an issue with Violet Hold because it's one of those ones that comes in waves. You can't really do anything about it. Next up, we're going to come to Drakthron Keep and Gundrak. And I gotta say, this is a great recovery from what they did previously. I mean, Gundrak and Drakthron used to be one of the most hated because first of all, the mojo pools were invisible, you couldn't see them. But now, they've brought something from Kata, the cauldrons over, the poison cauldrons, which means that mojo stuff is now visible, being red stuff on the ground, and you can churn it into green by having a cauldron buff. And there's cauldrons throughout the entire dungeon, which you can just right click, last for 5 minutes, and then bam, there we go. And I've got to say, it's amazing. I'm so surprised that they were able to make a painful debuff less painful and allow players to be explore and be creative with it, even though it's pretty simple, to be honest. But at least get rid of it, because that dungeon was just like sanguine, and no one really likes sanguine pretty much. And I reckon that was a really good fix, and I gotta applaud Blizzard for that as well. Next up is gonna be Trial of the Champion. Okay, Trial of the Champion obviously being the new dungeon, and I gotta say its beta dungeon obviously doesn't have an alpha. It's pretty decent and actually quite funny as well, where you have bananas on the ground. You can get buffs as well. There's actually cake on the ground that gives you a bit of a buff. There's obviously Berserking, Restoration, a lot of PvP buffs on the ground as well. obviously frost and immolation traps and stuff like that, explosive traps if you want to run into them. I guess overall, it just adds a bit of fun as well if you just want to slip over a banana and stuff like that. It does restrict the space to an extent, but it doesn't restrict the space so much that you can't do the encounters. Okay, like the auto encounters are fairly easy. I mean, the only one that makes it a bit harder is the Black Knight, of course, because the Black Knight has ghoul explosions. But overall, like, it's just a bit of fun. And at the same time, you can get a, berserking and a bit of buffs as well at the same time. I like the comment and the flavor text of it as well as, spectators might get a bit more rowdier than usual. And I found it, I thought it was pretty funny. The next one, which I gotta say is a bit of a so-so, like, they made big improvements everywhere else, but this dungeons or these dungeons is Utgarde Pinnacle and Utgarde Keep. So with Utgarde Pinnacle and Utgarde Keep, they included a fire debuff to negate the frost debuff. So if someone gets glaciate and they're on someone with the fire debuff, it goes away. Now, you would think, hey, this is like Drakron Keep and Gundrak. Well, the problem is that glaciate is not visible until you get it, and the fire debuff is not visible at all, okay, until you start chunking damage. It's kind of like, when glaciate was introduced, that if you didn't notice for a half a second, it was just gone. You were just dead, okay? But, now this time you can get rid of it, but the problem is that it's not visible enough for you to get rid of, and it's still just as annoying. Like, it's fire debuff is just another glaciate, basically. It's 5% thing max HP for 5 seconds. And it's just another annoying debuff. I gotta say for these ones, in particular for Utgarde Pinnacle and Utgarde Keep, they need to make a different one. Okay, if I'm gonna be real, they need to make a different one. They need to make someone, burn and someone freeze, and they need to come together, and then basically they both get a buff if they come together, basically. Or, anyone within 10 yards gets a buff, and that's pretty much it. Okay, that's enough one. That's what it could have done. But Utgarde Pinnacle and Utgarde Keep is a bit of a miss, to be honest. Like a bit of a miss. Now, last but not least, is Culling of Stratholme. Culling of Stratholme, they've added Toxic Horrors. Now, this one will catch you out the first time, most likely, because to get rid of Toxic Horrors, you need a Holy Hand Grenade, which is in the crates, and you can only have 5 Holy Hand Grenades. Now, you think, hey, this is great. The worst part is that the RNG of Culling of Stratholme, where you could be running right to left, and there's about, I think, 8 zombie horrors, or 7 zombie horrors, and you could be running from left to right, having to use your Holy Hand Grenades to get rid of the horrors. And then when you get to the street section at the back where there's 1 zombie horror, you don't have it, you have to kill it. Now, overall, I'm going to say, like, you could probably kill it as you kill trash in that instance as well, because they have Andrew and do absolutely nothing. But again, it's going to be quite annoying when you're basically beating down a meat sponge, okay? It's kind of the meat sponge kind of thing. I think I'm going to say overall, I think they need to give a restock of Holy Hand Grenades, but then again, at the same time, then that affix becomes, meaningless. So I guess at the same time, I think the strategy has to be like, don't use your Holy Hand Grenades, keep 1 or 2 for the back, and pretty much it just slowly cleave them down as you go to the mobs and stuff like that. But I thought it was an interesting little change. I was wondering what they were going to do if you're infected or anything like that. But, basically see it there. Actually, you know what? I forgot. That wasn't the last affix, actually. I always forget about Spider Dungeons. Now, the Spider Dungeons have got an interesting one. So they had Web Wrap previously. And now, Web Wrap, every second you spend in Web Wrap, you get a Shadow Imbuement, which gives the echo of a spell that you cast or ability, and does 150% more damage to it. So if you do a Hammer of Righteous, it will echo that ability and do 150% damage to each bomb. It is very, very great and all, but I gotta say, no one is going to leave a person sitting in Web Wrap for about 2 to 3 seconds, okay? And they're all going to be bursted out. And also, I think 1 or 2 seconds of being stuck in a web is not worth the spell echo. It really depends, but, it's better to be out of it and, putting your dots up and stuff like that than being in it in the first place. As per usual, it's still got its annoyingness of Azjol-Nerub and Old Kingdom, but I guess that overall, I guess the Shadow Imbuement's like some sort of give back, considering that, normally you wouldn't get that give back at all. So something that they give back just being web wrapped. But anyways, guys, that's it for the affixes. I'm highly positive about the affixes in beta. It makes the dungeons a lot more funner, and it makes it, like, the mobs not feel like a goddamn meat sponge. Like, or the mobs just get extra HP and damage and that's it. It's like, ooh, you can do more in inventive ways of doing this. You can chain pull, what's the new strategy here and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people did ask for this. Like, a lot of people did ask, okay, can we have a Mythic Plus that isn't timed? Something that we can have a bit of fun with and stuff like that. And Raph Classics got it. I'm looking forward to the next edition with the ICC dungeons. Anyways, guys, if you guys like this video, like, comment, subscribe.